Alright, we're talking about this conversation. So, you all know what this is, right? You know this word. Everybody associates it with something that's so bad that you should be so, it's such a bad thing that why is a guy 15 years old talking about this? Well, here I am to now explain to you, to the rest of the world, why sex is possibly the most best thing that somebody can possibly do when they're of age, also known as just why the reproductive system is the best system out of the entire body. Throughout this presentation, I will be showing all the parts of the reproductive system, how it works, what goes on inside, different types of diseases, and how it interacts with the rest of the body. This in turn will give you a full defined explanation in why I will be able to prove why having the reproductive system, if we were to have only one system left in our body, it would have to be the reproductive system. Now, I will need to change the scene. There we go. Magic of editing and a lot of idiocy. We have now basically done a drowned out version of how the male's genitals work and how the female's genitals work. Now, I'm just going to be blunt with this. I know a lot more about this system than I do of this system. Although I've done my research on both, I am a male. I know a lot more about this. So, what does this pertain? Well, it pertains to the fact that both males and females have genitals, but their genitals are different in ways. I will get into the explanation of why they're so different when it comes to how the systems interact with both. But for the sake of simplicity, I will just simply explain what both we have. So we have all of this. Well, one side has this, the other side has this. Their whole thing is to make sperm and egg cells. Sperm is built by the males, while egg cells are built by the females. The egg cells are given to the female at her birth, usually stored in the ovaries. Males, on the other hand, are constantly making sperm cells because, well, who knows where we're going to need them. They are also constantly being built, but they usually only last about a 48-hour period before they simply dissolve and go away into the urinary system to be shot out as waste, also known as piss. Now, we both have for women, they have things such as ovaries. The ovaries flap the tube, a bigger version of the uterus, which is where the child is going to be stored when things happen. I will explain a little bit later. And the cervix and the vagina. Now, on a male, we got the prostate, the actual penis and the penis head, and then the testes, which is these things right here, also known as our balls. Now, what we have here is very simple and time to explain how the whole devil's tangle process works. So, as I explained before, males constantly making, having a certain amount. Women also have a period cycle, as some of you may know, where the best way that I can describe it, and quite frankly as I understand it, is like just a massive version of a cleanup cycle. It's, oh, hey, time to get this out of here, and that's exactly what happens. Well, not exactly, I'm probably a little bit wrong on that. However, an egg during or around the, give or take, middle of this period cycle, if you're using one of those fancy charts, an egg will be here, and it will travel up the fallopian tube, over down here, right before the crevice, into this little gap area here. Hopefully, at least that is what is hoped, that the male will have a ejaculation inside of the vagina, and the sperm cells will be thrown into and hopefully get to the egg. If there are no problems, there is still a chance that a woman will not get pregnant, for the simple fact being that, yeah, we make 2,000, I think, every second, but out of those, 2,000, only 1 or 2% of them are actually gonna make it there. If any will, make through the parent's journey. Very many of them have something wrong with them, with the tail, or the egg itself is literally has nothing to give, or it runs out of energy before it can get to the egg, or the woman's immune system gets to the sperm cell before it can do literally anything about it. Now, if the egg, if a sperm, a good sperm cell, and an egg cell come together, this egg will implant itself into the nearby wall and then slowly scuttle up to the uterus, where then more tubes and other such will come over and start the whole baby making process of splitting, dividing, splitting, dividing. The initial splitting, dividing does happen here until it is moved up here to the uterus for the baby to actually have a good place to grow, but it starts all here. Now I will be moving on to the different types of viruses and other nitbits and starts that can happen simply due to the fact that we're humans and we're sadly not invincible to everything. The first thing that we're definitely not invincible, and you hear this a lot, is the ever infamous cancer. Cancer is essentially a cell that has mutated and has gone the complete opposite direction of what it's supposed to do, and is sadly sapping resources from everything around it, trying to essentially convert the body into feeding its growing desire and slowly killing off its cells, similar to a virus. Now, the body is usually equipped to deal with cancer. As a matter of fact, every second or every second that you're alive, your body is essentially always searching for cancer. Since you're almost always growing, your body is constantly monitoring, making sure that nothing does go wrong, because it does have specific triggers that will happen so that cancer does not even occur in the first place, like manual shutdown codes when the electrical doesn't go well. Now, what will happen if the cancer is detected? Usually the woman will just simply be, if it happens, this is more common in a male, where they will just get rid of the part that is infected as the cancer in, for at least a male. As I understand it, it is significantly easier for removal and such. It just simply makes the male infertile, and usually when it's detected, the male, usually in his late 60s, is done. While in the woman, it's even more complicated, but in other words, usually leads to infertility if not caught quickly. Now, for the next thing I'll be talking about when it comes to viruses is something called endometriosis. endo endomitosis. Yes, this occurs when the tissue that is within the uterus starts to grow places that isn't the uterus. Usually that is like below the uterus, towards the bladder or the bowels, and very rarely it can also start to grow on other parts of the body. This will usually lead to infertility, the simple fact that the baby won't have the area to grow into. And there's very many signs of you possibly having it, such as the obvious being pain. But for lots of people, at least for some women, there is absolutely no pain. However, if you have an inability to get pregnant, although you theoretically should be getting pregnant, usually endometriosis is one of the possible reasons of why you are unable to become fertile, resulting in infertility. Next is internal cystitis, or also known as IC. It's a chronic bladder condition which results in discomfort or pain in the bladder or surrounding pelvic region. This more pertains towards the urinary system, but I'll explain again later how all those are connected together. Now then, people with IC have like the inflamed bladder walls, so these areas or the erectile tissue usually will get inflamed as well. This can cause scarring and stiffening within the bladder. People who have this usually are tender in the area that has this. They require the need to use the restroom a lot more and a lot more often, or feel the need to use the restroom in piss, although they don't actually have to, because I'll explain why. Another part of the body does that for you. And of course, severe empty, lots of pain. Next would be the polycystic ovary syndrome, also known as PCOS. This is a syndrome happens inside of a woman when the ovaries or adrenal glands for male hormones produces more male hormones than normal. So essentially, this is going to be a little bit into the whole endothermic system, but your body produces hormones. Males make testosterone. Women make the other one that is very necessary. But anyways, what happens is that due to this this like imbalance of what is supposed to be happening and what's not happening, the body will then have a cystis, a fluid-filled sac, develop on the ovaries. People who actually have these are likely women who are I don't know exactly how to say this, but women who are diagnosed as obese are more likely to have PCOS, and women with PCOS have increased risk of diabetes and heart disease, which of course include infertility, pelvic pain, lots of hair growth, excessive thickening, dark or like patches of, if you have white skin, all of a sudden you start going brown and black pigmentation. And then there's also, of course, sexually transmitted infections, which is quite frankly, there's a lot of different types, like over 20 types of STDs based off like CDC's fact check sheets. These are, of course, transmitted during the quote unquote devil's tango. If you know, you know. It is really bad for women because these could result into death. It's also bad for a man as well. It can also cause health problems for the unborn baby. These can happen just due to bacteria or parasites. It can be treated with some of these can be treated with antibiotics or medication. But if you have it, but if you have the infection through a virus, sadly there is no cure. However, you can get the antiviral medication so that you can help control the symptoms. The actual correct usage, so essentially using condoms greatly reduces the use condoms during sex as it will help you not attract any diseases. In other words, it will also stop. Now, I'm going to explain how this massive system works together with the rest of your brain. And I'm not just talking about like some of the obvious ones, but I'm still gonna say them. For example, you probably know that that fuzzy feeling in your brain when you see a girl that you like. That is due to the endocrine system, which is, the controlling of your hormones. Testosterone, which is produced inside of the testes, which is then in these testes, which high level of these testosterone levels have the brain say, okay, with all these testosterone levels, we need you to start making more sperm. Which this is how like the essentially places will communicate. It also helps so that the brain doesn't overproduce sperm. Speaking of it, the nervous system has a lot of play into it because again, the brain, which is a part of the nervous system, is essentially the powerhouse of the entire body. Without the brain, you wouldn't be able to make the sperm that is necessary to, make sperm and then have a lot of fun. Now, the circulatory system, this was one that I was actually very stunned by. Have you ever had that weird feeling in history class or some other long and repetitive class, and then all of a sudden you feel something very stiff in your hands that shouldn't be stiff at all considering the situation that you're stuck in? Or you're in an awkward situation where this happens and you got no idea why. You're not supposed to suddenly stiffen up. You can think that towards the brain and the circulatory system. The circulatory system is the reason why the penis will actually become erect, which is the whole point of the erectile tissue. Essentially, again, this is a little bit due to hormones, a little bit of, circulatory system also transports the hormones from, down here all the way to up here. I mean, like, there is a reason why the saying goes that the genitals is like the second brain of any animal. In other words, it's a complicated system. So if you're ever wondering why you suddenly get stiff in a certain region during your history project, you can now blame hormones and circulatory system. Now, here's a weird part. Women have 3 holes, while the male has 2 holes when it comes to the urinary area. For men, all we have is this tube. Down through that tube goes both our piss and also our sperm cells and during ejaculation. Women, on the other hand, they have a separate little thing that is another tube that goes towards their bladder and such. That will be the actual hole of where they piss. Instead of us males going just through one hole, one size fits all type of deal, they have a specific hole that is just for them to use the restroom, and that is important because for males at least especially, that is important. And then here's another thing: digestive system. The digestive system comes important, and it's multiple things. For one, digestive system is deeply connected to the endocrine system, which is again the thing that produces hormones. If you ate a lot of really good, tasty food, there's a higher chance that you'll be able to, you'll feel happy. And if you feel happy with your favorite certain someone, something very special at night might or might not happen. These will all culminate. The digestive system is, of course, supposed to bring in all the nutrients needed to build the sperm and the egg. For example, for sperm, it requires folate, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin C, E, and D. As for egg, it requires folate, zinc, omega-3, vitamin C's, D's, and also very crucial. In addition, they require selenium, selenum, Q10, and vitamin B. It's all important for the reproductive health. So, we will now go back to the long-awaited question of just why is the reproductive system the best system out of all? Well, 1. Genetics. We would not be able to live as a species without reproduction. Even the most basic of life forms have a way to multiply and reproduce. Without it, we would not be able to have a single chance, as we would simply just die out if we were to be first formed. And a second reason why, it's fun to do. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Go check out my other channels. Comment down below. Thank you. Have a good night.